Welcome. I am your host, Ramonda Jan, the founder of Women Thrive Media, visibility expert, and inspirational speaker. I founded this global community for women so every woman who is starting or running a business can feel like she has found a place to belong. So every woman is empowered to use her voice and share her message with the world. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast episode. I'm so excited to have you here for another amazing story and conversation with one of our guest speakers on the podcast. Today, I have a special guest for you, one of the speakers from the Women Thrive Summit, Tami Gabitas. Hi, Tami, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm amazing. I am excited about this conversation because when I first met you, Tami, I was so inspired by your story. And I've also experienced some of the very same things myself. And I think there are many other people who would be inspired by your story. So I'm excited to have you here for today's conversation, but also for our audience to get to know you. So today we're talking about confronting your pain, the courage to fight, and the power to heal. So today we're talking about trauma, about healing, and our guest today is Tami Gabitas, who is a renowned energy healer and gifted life coach based in Arizona, United States. With nearly a decade's worth of coaching experience, she taps into her intuitive abilities to heal those with trauma. And of course, Tami has her own very powerful and inspiring story to share with us today. So tell me, why are we talking about confronting our pains? It sounds quite powerful and perhaps scary for some.
Yes. Anytime you confront any type of pain or trauma or emotional baggage, it's scary. It's never easy. But when we do confront them and we work through them, we come out to be a better person. And there's so many ripple effects that come from that. It affects the way that we work in our relationships, the way we show up for our work. It has so many lasting effects. And that's why I really, really encourage people to face what's holding them back, face that emotional pain, whether it's trauma, whether it's just hardship from what they've encountered during their life. It's so important to embrace that.
Yeah, and I do find that going through life, sometimes we feel like, okay, well, I've dealt with it, or I put that trauma aside. Then in the moments when we least expect it, it kind of sort of peeks its head at us again. And it's like that thing, unresolved trauma. It's like that dragon head that just peeks out once in a while and just like, hey, I'm still here. So how can we actually have the courage to fight those dragons, I guess, and start the healing process?
To have the courage, you literally just have to start somewhere. Even if it's just okay, I'm going to tell someone, or I'm going to make the appointment with this counselor, or I don't know, just something that the smallest step is the biggest step, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's just, acknowledging is there. I find that we often hide or even hide from our own feelings because it's hard to face the pain.
Yes, it is so hard. It is so hard. And I know that from my own personal experience. I buried my voice for many, many years, hiding my trauma because I did have the opportunity once to try to get help. And the person that I was working with, the counselor, she betrayed me. And instead of fighting, instead of facing that fear, I hid it even more until the point that it was these physical things that were happening to me. Like I was losing my hair, I was sick all the time. No energy. My body was seriously in stress out mode because it was so stressed out from the trauma that was literally within inside me. And it wasn't until I was at my end point where I was like, this is the last thing. I'm going to try a naturopath. And he did some tests. He told me to do this EEG testing, which is a brain map, and it measures what's going on inside the brain. And he found my trauma. And instead of betraying me like the first person, he gave me the space to speak up. And I was scared because he literally was like, Tami, did something bad happen to you in your childhood? And because of my previous experience, I froze. I was like, I'm not speaking up about this. No way. And then he asked me again, Tami, did something happen? And I don't know how I found the courage. As I look back at that experience now, I do not know, but I said yes. Those 3-letter words, 3 letters came out of my mouth, and he held space for me. He gave me the voice that I needed. And because of that experience, I'm here with you today talking. I'm 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 a different person.
And it's so powerful. And I love the fact that you are empowered now to use your voice. And, we have had many conversations in the last few months, and just getting to know you, your purpose, your passion for what you do, because it comes from your own experience of going through not only very deep trauma, but also not being able to seek out for help. Because I think the scariest part of anyone who has experienced trauma, or that ugly head, it keeps picking up at them and they perhaps are afraid to face their trauma, it's really difficult because you don't necessarily feel safe with anyone to talk about it. Tell me a little bit more about the work that you're doing right now.
So I got into my work. I've always been into energy healing for many, many years. And then when I met with my doctor and we came up with a plan, I did a lot of neurofeedback, EMDR, and the trauma was not leaving my body. I was getting a lot of the mental help, the physical help, but I literally had this twitch in my body and it wouldn't go away. And it would just come and go whenever, and it lasted for months. It was so hard to deal with. And my EMDR therapist was like, let's go into, like, why don't you try trauma yoga? And I literally heard my body say, no, that's not your purpose. And I was thinking, okay, well, how much longer is this going to go for? And so for some reason, I decided I'm going to try Reiki. And I learned, my very first class changed my life because I learned how to move the energy. I learned how to move the trauma, and I felt such a calling to it. And so now I use that in my practice to help women move the trauma out of their bodies. Because doctors and therapists and coaches, they're great. They're so wonderful. But when you combine Reiki as a complementary therapy with dealing with PTSD and anxiety and big traumas like this, it's such a valuable tool.
Wow. And it just goes to show, I love the fact that you shared, trauma yoga just did not work for you. And, and sometimes people say, well, that didn't work for me. I tried, maybe perhaps they tried Reiki and that didn't work for them, or another method of healing. It just goes to show how individual we are and how different people may need different healing methods. What kind of wisdom could you share from your decade and more of your work and experience in terms of, I guess, how trauma manifests to start with, and perhaps what are the first steps for people starting to look into healing methods?
Trauma can manifest as simple as anxiety, depression. For me, I started losing my hair. Also, other things were just hyper vigilance, just always being on my guard, like, and being like so fearful of things that really weren't fearful. Also, other trauma responses are just like that people pleasing mechanism of feeling like you always have to say sorry.
Yeah.
There's a list of many other categories that can go into that. But for me personally too, I could not form a connection with my children. I had these two beautiful baby boys, and I was so hard on myself because I literally felt like I could not connect with them. I had a hard time bonding, and I was so hard on myself. But I didn't know at that time it was a trauma response, because when you experience something so terrible, it's very hard to form relationships.
Oh, wow. I had no idea that, you know, forming relationships is one of the things that perhaps is a cause of trauma, and it's quite prevalent.
Yeah, I didn't know either, and if I look back at that version of myself, oh, I would have offered so much more self-compassion because I was so hard on myself. I was like, "What is wrong with me?" And it
Mm.
was just so heavy, so heavy.
Yeah, and I guess that's one of the things that we don't do when we have been through trauma. We don't put ourselves first, right? And I'm sure many of the listeners can relate. You people please, you give, 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 give to everybody else, but it's like you leave yourself last and you don't have your self-compassion. You beat yourself up for even the smallest things.
Yes, 100%. It's because it comes from that, like, lack of self-love because that was taken away from us, and it's really hard to work through that unless you know what's going on.
Yeah. So, how does one start looking and considering healing methods? I know there are many of different healing methods, but once someone is aware and that they want to do something about it, and I know it's very courageous, as we're speaking of today, to seek out for help. How can one go about doing so?
I would research a lot of different methods, look into therapy, look into EMDR, look into neurofeedback. I would always recommend starting out with a medical professional just because they are trained in that. But then I would also encourage looking for alternative therapies that can support those while you're going through difficult times, like Reiki or meditation, even neurofeedback or yoga, anything like that. There's a million different types of therapies out there, even just being around horses. Horses is a new therapy that's coming into play that is a beautiful practice. Just find out what calls to you. There's no wrong or right method. It's what speaks to your soul. And if you go into it knowing like this is what makes me happy, this is what I'm called to, you have a better success of healing.
Hmm, interesting. What does your life look like now? Now that you have gone through healing, and obviously you mentioned some of the medical things that has really come up for you, anxiety and not forming relationships. Now that you've gone through that journey of healing, I mean, it's beautiful to obviously watch that you're a speaker at a summit and you're starting to you really use your voice to empower others. But what does Tammy's world look like today in comparison to what it looked like maybe a couple decades ago?
I love this question. So, my life looked like many years ago a life full of fear, a life of a girl that wouldn't use her voice, a life that was just so full of heavy emotion that I was constantly stressed out and worried all the time. I couldn't even go to the grocery store without another adult because it was too hard. So now my life is completely different. You wouldn't recognize the Tammy that you see now. I am able to go to the grocery store, obviously, now. I'm able to show up for my children and be present and teach them like beautiful skills that can help them. Also, I'm able to form connections with women by helping them feel like they're not alone and support them throughout whatever pain they're going through. I also have um, found my voice. I am more authentic to who I am because of the fear that overcame my body. I left a high demand religion that did not call to me. And now I'm stepping into my power now, claiming who I am, what I serve. And I'm living my life that I've always wanted, that I never could have imagined many years ago.
My goodness, I love that. It's what a transformation, what a journey to start with. I just want to, take a moment to really acknowledge just the journey that you have had to walk from initially having to, first of all, experience trauma. And secondly, not having the safe space and not having the support and the tools accessible to you, and people betraying you in that process. And I can't imagine what that may have been like. And then all of that trauma manifesting itself to health and other conditions. But how amazing it is to see you self-empowered, see you taking control of your life, of your the outcomes, and just being a whole transformed woman from within. It's just so beautiful and refreshing. If something that you could wish for other people who perhaps have been through very traumatic experiences or looking to rebuild their life in a different way, what would be the message you would have for them today?
I believe my message would be start. Even if you get thrown back 500 feet, just start. It's the little baby steps that allow the big steps. And just know, like, keep trying. If you can't find someone that will help you, keep trying. If you need a community and no one is resonating with you, keep trying. Like, have hope, believe in yourself, and just continue to go down that journey, even though it's very difficult. Just know you're not alone, and to keep trying, because your community will come, your bravery will shine.
I just want to say, don't run away. Don't run away, because the longer we run away, or we think we're running away from facing our fears, facing our feelings, facing the pain that we experience, or the pain that we will experience as a result of looking back, honestly, nothing is more worth it than being empowered, than being in a place of freedom from all of that. And I know no matter how big or small that pain, or how big or small your trauma may have been. And I know, some people may have not have experienced something really huge, but it's still a trauma. But don't be afraid and don't run away from it, because you can't run away from yourself. Your thoughts, your mind is 24/7 with you, right? And how difficult is it to live in your own mind when it's constantly negating everything you're trying to do? Tami, I'm sure you have experienced that, as in, trying to break through, moments of that breakthrough.
Yes, 100%. And something that you mentioned that I kind of want to piggyback off is trauma is trauma. Like, whether it's a capital T or a lowercase t, my trauma is no different than yours. It's still a distressful event in your life that you experienced. So give it that awareness, give it that moment, and work through it. It is just so needed for yourself, for your relationships, and for your generations to come, because if you if you do the work, it not only benefits you, it can change the world, because people see that. And also, it doesn't pass down to our children and to their children. Be the chain breaker, be the person that is willing to say, this ends with me. I'm going to use my voice. I am going to have the courage to say, this stops. Because when you do that, there's so much beauty and power within.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And And being so courageous. And I remember when we first spoke and you put yourself forward to speak at the Women Thrive Summit. That is our annual women empowerment event. I was so inspired not only just by your story, but also your bravery. And over again, you keep stepping forward and you're like, I'm here, I'm ready. And that just shows the level of healing and the self-work that has gone into your own personal development, to your own building of your own confidence to be here today. Because I resonate very much with your experience of losing my voice and not being in a position where I was able to seek out for help because I didn't understand what I was going through. Sometimes we're more aware than other times, and sometimes we don't know it's the trauma affecting us in certain ways. So for me, that was the case. I wasn't sure. I didn't know what it was manifesting in certain ways that was just causing me a lot of pain. But I just want to celebrate you for speaking up because I believe the more we speak up of our traumas, of our experiences, which is very courageous. And for anyone who's listening, if you never shared, or if you ever tried to share a story with anyone, you would know it takes a whole lot of courage to speak of it, and it feels vulnerable. So I just want to say thank you, Tami, for being so brave and stepping forward with your beautiful story because it certainly has inspired me. And I just hope that it would inspire many other people around the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a beautiful journey.
So Tami, you are one of our speakers at the Women Thrive Summit. What is your talk going to be and why should people attend it?
I'm so excited. It's just a few weeks away. So, my talk title is How to Discover Your Voice After Trauma. Learn how you can rediscover your voice and share your truth. And it's going to be May 24th at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Yes, March for Women's History
Oh,
Month.
did I say May? Oh, yes, March.
That's okay. I can't believe it's here already. For me, it's just so amazing that I mean, for those who don't know, Women's Thrive Summit is our annual event that we do. And it seems to come around so quickly. It's like March is here already. And we started this process. We put out speaker applications back in September when I met you. And it just seems like, oh my God, this was like in a snap of fingers. March is already here. We were doing this. So for any of you who would like to hear more from Tami through the Women Thrive Summit, if you wanted to attend it, it is happening 20th to 24th of March in 2023. And if you're perhaps listening to this podcast at any time after this date, you can still get a replay of our events, or the previous events are available, and the upcoming events as well at womenthrivesummit.com. And of course, if you feel inspired by Tami's story, what I'd love for you to do is make sure you head over to the show notes and connect with Tami. Connect with her on social media channels. Let her know how this conversation has inspired you. Tami, what is the actually best way to reach out to you or find you on whichever platform that you prefer?
Yeah, so I am mainly on Instagram. You can find me at strength_to_surrender. That's my account. And yeah, I thank you.
Strength to surrender. And what a beautiful words to end this podcast with. You gotta have strength and surrender, and in order to have that transformation, really have the courage to go through that healing, which is, as you heard today, is so worthwhile. Any last words before we finish today, Tami?
I believe in you. If no one believes in you right now in this journey and you're beginning, or maybe you're in the middle, just know you're not alone. I believe you. Come be a part of my Instagram, be part of my community so you don't feel alone in this, because I felt so alone and I want no one to ever experience that. So come be a part and just know that you can do this. You can heal. It is possible.
So, for all of you watching or listening to this podcast today, thank you all so much. It's been an amazing conversation. Make sure you follow all the information in the show notes to connect with Tami. If you haven't saved your spot for the Women Thrive Summit, do make sure you save your spot. It's just around the corner. Or if you're watching this past 24th of March, make sure you go check out the replay, because this year, as well as every year, we have women from all around the world talking about healing, trauma, confidence building, business, marketing, visibility, confidence, purpose. There's just so many things. And I think if just one conversation could spark a new path in your life, and I know personally that just conversation with someone really inspiring or empowering could change my life. And I know there are people in on this journey that would be able to change your life too. So thank you all for listening, and thanks to Tami for being here and being amazing at sharing her story here today with us. And we look forward to seeing you on another episode. Thanks, Tami. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Did you enjoy this episode? Share it with the world. Make sure to also leave a review and subscribe for future episodes.